Hi guys, my name is Meaghan. I just graduated last year, and I majored in finance, and I was also really involved with the real estate club at BC. So my first job that I'm in now is in commercial real estate in New York City. And I actually started on a new team in my firm 2 weeks before quarantine started. So it was a little hard to adjust, but I have been having a great time. I started in a rotational program, which was supposed to go through end of August this year. So I was supposed to just be finishing it. But end of February, I found a team that I really liked, and I ended up leaving the rotational program and starting with them full time first week of March. So the team I work on is called the Institutional Sales Group, and we work in capital markets, selling large buildings all over the country, but primarily in New York City. So we take any deals that are over $75 million up to $2 billion plus dollars. So it's really cool stuff that we get to work on. And I chose it because I really liked finance, but I did an internship at a bank and I really did not like working for a bank. So this was kind of a great alternative where I could use the Excel and the financial underwriting skills, but apply it to something that was a little bit more fun in my eyes.
Great, thank you. I think, Michael, are you on the call somewhere?
Yeah, still here.
Okay, good, thank you. I just disappeared for a sec. I was like,
No problem.
Gotcha. All right, thanks. Okay, I'm gonna go, Mike, why don't you go next?
Sure. My name is Mike Liccardo. I am a 2011 graduate of CSUN, finance concentration, and probably kind of an anomaly that I've been with the same company since graduation. Just had my 9-year anniversary, 10 years if you include my internship. I work at Bloomberg LP, the company that Mayor Mike Bloomberg started way back in the 80s after he left banking. My current role is I manage a team of salespeople, about 10 people under my team, and we cover our accounts in the Mid-Atlantic region and a portion of New York City. We cover, the big accounts we cover are actually pretty interesting right now, like the Federal Reserve, the World Bank, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, places like that. And what Bloomberg does is we sell financial technology and data. The main product that we sell is the terminal. I think that's what he's most known for. Lately we've been shifting a lot towards data and different solutions as kind of everybody seems to be a quant or some sort of quantish these days. So they need data for their models. So we'll sell that to them. And, we manage the relationships and we try to sell the new products, upsell them on different things. And my path to Bloomberg was, I knew I always wanted to be in a client-facing role, and I wasn't super passionate about any sort of sales and trading type job or anything like that. And the idea of like sitting behind a desk and doing models just wasn't something that I wanted to do. So I was able to get an internship through Bloomberg, through BC at the time. And I remember there was one experience that kind of sealed the deal that basically said, if I get this offer, I'm going to take it. And I was with my sales mentor who covered Bank of America. Bank of America has this gorgeous building in Bryant Park in New York City. And we were walking the FX trading desk, and our software was everywhere. And everybody knew her name was Janine, my mentor at the time. And there was nobody that she didn't know. She had access to the junior folks, the trading assistants on the desk, all the way up to the desk heads, managing directors, and the COOs that have the desk, the offices on the outside. So she was really tuned in, and she was meeting with everybody, helping them kind of work through issues, and that kind of hooked me. Like, yeah, I could see myself doing this. I still got to be involved with finance and the interest that I had in the markets in general and the participants in the market without being a participant myself, but still being able to service those customers every day. My career at Bloomberg has spanned, a couple different departments. You start off on kind of a support desk, and then they work through different sales roles. I've covered regions. I've covered some of our biggest hedge fund clients, and now I took a job, about 2 years ago as a manager of one of our sales groups. And like I said, 9 years at the same company these days is pretty rare for a new grad.
It sure is. Awesome. Yeah, it is a company that I think a lot of students you know, I wish we had a more engaged, you know, I wish Bloomberg was more engaged on campus for BC, because I think, you know, people, the
They
fact
used to be.
they're still happy. Yeah, right?
I
think
know.
so.
I
Yeah.
got to talk to HR.
Yeah, you got to get them back on.
Maybe if you guys bought a couple more terminals. There's my sales pitch.
Yeah, right. Yeah, perhaps we could. Yeah, I know. That's true. I don't even know how. We definitely don't have enough. And so, and I also want to mention just for you guys, this is being recorded because we are, you know, putting it up on the Canvas site for all the students who can't make it tonight. So just, you know, we won't hold anything against you if you say anything really dumb, but that's okay. Eduardo, how about you want to introduce yourself and talk about where you are?
Yeah, so my name's Eduardo Saldivar. I graduated in 2014. I started off at Johnson & Johnson. They have a 2-year rotational program, so I started there. My first rotation was an internal audit, so I'm actually a finance and an accounting double major or concentration. So I was there for a year. It was a great opportunity. I was able to travel around the different J&J affiliates worldwide. So I was traveling all over the world first year out of college. That was pretty much the selling point for me for taking the job. After that first rotation, I moved down to Philly. There's an OTC plant down there. So I was working in supply chain finance for my second rotation. I was working on brands like Tylenol, Motrin, Zyrtec, Benadryl, like those types of medications. Graduated the program, went back to internal audit for a year and a half, continued traveling, learned a lot there. And after about a year and a half being back in internal audit, I transitioned to group finance within medical devices. I was there for about a year and a half. Some of my responsibilities included, I don't know if you guys have ever listened to an earnings call, but I used to write the script for the medical device earnings call. J&J has, it's a healthcare conglomerate. They work within medical devices, pharmaceuticals, and the consumer sector. So I was working a lot with the medical device global franchise at that time. After about 5 years, I figured I needed a change. So I transitioned and left the company, and I went to work for L'Oreal, where I am right now. I'm one of the finance managers on the Georgio Armani beauty brand. I've been here for about a year. It's very different than J&J. J&J is a little bit more conservative. L'Oreal is a little bit more outlandish, to say the least. And since they're in New York, it's a little bit faster paced. I work a lot with the marketing teams on a lot of the new launches that we're doing, whether that's fragrances or beauty products. I am in the retail landscape, so it's a very exciting time to be in my role right now. And I say that with extreme sarcasm, given that the retailers have been closed for a couple of months due to COVID. So trying to figure out how we can salvage profitability. But yeah, I've been here for a year, and I don't know if everyone was on the call when I first joined, but I'm actually applying to business school. So hopefully within a year, I will be in business school and not in the real world anymore. But yeah, 6 years, it's been fun.
So how did you, because J&J doesn't recruit for that program, right, at BC, how did you find your way into that?
They don't. So I actually went through my mother's country club. She has like a bunch of friends who actually work at J&J, and just kind of through like networking, it helped a lot. I did a lot of the on-campus stuff, some banking stuff, some consulting stuff, but didn't really find anything that I was really passionate about, and just kind of working with the network really helped me a lot, which I know is not probably an answer that you're looking for, but always use your network nonetheless.
Absolutely. And you know, everybody has a network in the Boston College show, regardless of your, you know, where you came from. Yeah, so speaking of places that don't recruit at BC and large product companies, Ryan. So I remember when you went to P&G way back when.
Yes. Yeah, it feels like ancient history now. So hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Kiracofe, BC class of 2011. I was a finance marketing double concentration. So yeah, as Amy alluded to, I started right out of school at Procter Gamble in Boston. I did an internship there between my junior and senior year, just applied cold to the internship and got an offer at the end of that summer. So I worked at P&G for 4 years in the finance team. The majority of that time was it was all on the Gillette and Venus business in Boston, but the majority of that time was on the North America go-to-market strategy and the e-commerce team actually at that time. So that's kind of the first part of my story, and I'm happy to talk to people about that. Then it ended up being a time where my role was going to be changing, potentially changing locations, potentially going to Cincinnati to headquarters, and chose to take a leap at what my kind of lifelong passion has always been, which has been cities. I've been an obsessive person with cities, how they grow, how they move, how they feel, how they connect people to jobs and healthcare, and the policy and processes that make all those things happen. So I went and got my master's degree in city planning. And then my career since then has kind of been working at the intersection of where finance meets urban planning, which is kind of in the economic development and real estate side of city building. So I worked my first 3 years out of grad school until earlier this year at a urban planning consulting firm that did, again, economic development and real estate type of work. So generally advising cities as a consultant on how they attract the jobs that they want, how they attract the types of real estate development that they want, how they concentrate development, where the best places for development to go are, and then kind of what the policy choices, the planning choices, the zoning choices maybe can be that can help them get there. So that was a fantastic experience. I think consulting it was great because I got to see a lot of different cities, a lot of different types of projects. You are constantly engaging in new processes and learning all the time. But ultimately also your product is usually just a report or advice or a presentation or something like that. Is there's if somebody doesn't agree with what you say or like it, then maybe it goes and sits on a shelf, or maybe it actually gets put into practice. But an opportunity came along earlier this year that I ended up leaping at. So now I work actually in real estate and affordable housing development. So I am an associate developer at a company called Pennrose. It's a Philadelphia-based company, but I'm at the office here in Boston. And we do affordable and mixed income housing development in cities all over, generally the East Coast. So we're a end-to-end developer all the way from scouting new opportunities for affordable housing development through figuring out how we structure the deal, how we raise debt for the deal, what tax credits or other programs we might apply to, all the way through design, construction, lease up, and then management. So it is soup to nuts, which is awesome. I'm learning every day. I've only been 4 months in this job. I changed during the pandemic, like I mentioned earlier, which has been a wild experience. But yeah, happy with the move I made. And I also am still really happy I went the finance route in school and started at finance. I wouldn't be in this job, in this position, if I didn't have that.
Great, thank you. And we'll talk a little bit more about the whole finance thing next. But yeah, I mean, what a time to affordable housing. I mean, talk about, trying to solve some of life's great problems right now. That's right up in the top of the list. So it must be a wild ride, I can imagine.
Yes.
Yeah, great. And John, on to you. You're at Dell, right?
Yes. So, hey, everybody, I'm John Treinen. I'm class of 2018. I was a finance and entrepreneurship concentration. So I think entrepreneurship was still relatively new at that point. So I'm sure it's expanded since I graduated. My career path kind of started actually my sophomore year summer. I was an intern at Dell Technologies, which is where I still work today. And my first internship was actually down in Austin, Texas, which is where Dell's headquartered. So I kind of came to that role just from hearing from a family friend who had interned there before. And he was like, oh, this is a really great opportunity. Austin's really cool. Kind of similar to LA, because I'm originally from LA and my family friend was as well. And he's like, it's pretty similar to LA is just Texas style. So wanted to give it a try and went down there for a summer and loved it and had a great summer internship. It was a really well run program, and then did well enough to get a return offer, and then wanted to see kind of what my opportunities were with another internship, and kind of came in at a good time to Dell, because at the time they were going through one of the biggest mergers for like tech companies, with merging with EMC, which is actually a company based up in Hopkinton, Massachusetts, about 45 minutes outside of Boston. So I leveraged that opportunity to get my second internship up in Boston. So I was able to stay in Boston for a summer, lived off campus on Foster Street for any of those who are off campus, and worked my summer internship that summer. And I was doing more of an accounting role in SOX compliance. So I had a role that was more of a traditional product finance, my first internship, and then a complete 180 to very accounting heavy SOX compliance, which I'm sure some of you have learned about so far. But after that summer internship, I realized I did not want to do SOX compliance. So I was looking to see what my opportunities would be at Dell, and I got an offer to be in our like rotational program, which is called the Financial Development Program. So it's a 2-year program where you jump around every 6 months to a different role within finance. So I just finished that up in August, actually. So I had 4 different opportunities to kind of see different parts of how corporate finance works at a huge $90 billion IT hardware and software company. So had an opportunity to rotate in a role that was kind of doing finance for basically our professional services or consultancies that Dell offers to customers. Then I had a role in a more traditional FP&A, which is looking at long-term forecasting, planning, some of that more traditional, what people would see as corporate finance. I then had a role in an internal audit team, so kind of a little more audit facing and looking at some of our key processes and across different functions. And in that role, I was actually supporting a team in India. So I was in Boston working India time zone hours. So definitely had the advantages and disadvantages of a global company there. And then my 4th rotation was in a cloud finance group. So it was a new part of Dell's business where we're doing a lot of seeing how we can offer some of our products as a cloud, and which is really interesting because there's a big transition in IT hardware industry, which is kind of pairing with a lot of movements that are happening across all different types of industries, is how we can offer everything as a subscription, because a lot of people want everything as a subscription now, from your coffee all the way to your shoes to your IT hardware. So we're definitely trying to get on that train. And that's kind of how I ended up in my current role, which is I'm a strategy analyst. So I'm doing a lot of work to understand how we can really start offering some of our, traditional $1 million IT products as a subscription. So there's a lot of really kind of learnings that we have to take from the industry and other types of, products and other types of companies that may not even be in IT spaces, to how do they measure and how do they track performance for subscription services. So it's been really interesting. And I've learned a ton over the course of that rotational program and also in my current role. And the rotational program is pretty interesting. And we actually have been recruiting at BC for the last 2 years. So I was the first FDP, that's what the program participants are called, from BC in like 5 years. And then I was like, well, I think I'm doing pretty well here. So I think we can get some BC candidates. And now there's I think 3 or 4 kids, FDPs in the program. We've had about 12 interns from BC. So we're starting to get a pretty big impact on campus at the career fairs and such, and pretty big impact in the program as well. So hopefully we can keep driving those numbers up. The goal is to beat UMass with BC candidates by the next 2 years. So hopefully some of you in this class can help us out there.
A worthy goal. So it sort of strikes me how much, because, we've lucky to have a few of you on here who've done sort of these, LDP type programs where they, and I think that, my experience at BC is, like investment banking consulting. And so a lot of times when you talk to students, they'll talk about, I want to do consulting. Well, why do you want to do consulting? I want to solve problems. Okay, let's get a little, we do a lot of that. Or I want to work with people, or I like the variety. And I think that, the variety, what's great about like these type of programs too, is they're cultivating you for, yes, it's leadership within an organization, but you are getting that great varied skill set. And to your point, John, you're now working in strategy, which is sort of, the goal for a lot of our students eventually, that they want to do that type of work. So I'm a huge fan, and whether whether they recruit at BC or not, because both in the case of like Ryan and Eduardo, they were, you guys kind of sought those out through your own networking, right? But they've seemed to have provided you with some really good, solid training in a wide, the stuff you probably wouldn't have got exposed to in some of these other roles that you may have considered. So I'm going to jump sort of to this, like the finance. So sort of like, I guess the question is, to phrase it, thinking about, how has studying finance, sort of informed your decision-making about career choices, but also more importantly, like, what about it has really helped you in your particular career field and, that you're doing right now, that you did right out of college? Like, are you glad you chose finance? Could you have chosen anything and been equally happy? Just sort of in hindsight, what are some of the values of doing that? And some of the things that maybe you're doing in your current job that you think, finance really helped you with. Ryan, you want to start? I'll mix it up this time.
Sure. I mean, I've always thought that from a career development standpoint, you are never worse off for having worked in a finance job. There's no company that will see you as less relevant or competitive seeing that you've worked a finance job in the past. I think maybe not every track has that to offer. I think, and obviously my experience is clouded by Procter, but I would guess Eduardo would say some of the same things. Working in finance, you are a true business owner in a lot of cases, right? The buck stops with finance a lot of the time in terms of decision making, especially on a brand like I was working on it in Gillette and Venus. We would always say, going into big team meetings, you 20 team members, 30 team members in a room, and you've got people from marketing and product supply and consumer relations, consumer knowledge, all these different departments. Maybe one is presenting. We were always taught in finance, you need to be the second most knowledgeable person in the room on everything, because the question is always going to come to the finance team in some way. At least that was my experience. So, seeing the ways that finance touches every single aspect of the business and the decision-making process, that for me was like the ultimate schooling process after school. And like I said, then when it's time to, whether your career continues in that first finance gig or whatever it is, or not, you can tell that story then afterwards and talk about all the different parts of the business you get to touch. If you're kind of working from that finance frame of mind, if that makes sense. I don't know, Eduardo, do you have a similar experience?
Yeah, at least for me, you're really that point person, and you're the one who kind of brings the whole picture together. So in my current role right now, I work with sales, I work with marketing, I work with supply chain, and these departments kind of work in their own silos. And as a finance person, you are in charge of bringing it all together to tell your head of brand or your president or your GM or whomever to say, like, this is what the total Armani portfolio looks like in terms of a sales perspective, a gross margin perspective, and a marketing investment perspective. And this is why it makes sense. And you're kind of the one who's been, am I on mute? Okay, good. And you're the one who's given pretty much full autonomy to say, like, this is an investment that makes sense. We are going to launch this product. We are not going to launch this product. We're going to get out of this retailer. It just doesn't make sense. We can move forward or not. And you have the numbers to substantiate it. There have been numerous times in which I've had to debate a lot of people that their ideas just don't make sense from a full P&L perspective. It can get very uncomfortable. And luckily, I had the opportunity to be an internal audit and deal with a lot of upper level management to say, like, this is just not going to work and why. And at the end of the day, sometimes the GM has the final decision, whether it's good or bad, but at least you're able to present your case from a holistic point of view. I will say, though, take some accounting classes. They're very much underrated. I at least when I was in school, finance and accounting had a bit of a divide. I don't think you need the full accounting degree. I think it's helpful to take at least some of the classes, because the more accounting that you understand, the better you will be in finance. And even a lot of the finance courses that you take, basic finance, corporate investments, and some of the other basic courses, you end up taking some sort of an accounting style like exam, whether that's like creating an income statement, balance sheet, understanding the cash flow. You really have to have the building blocks of accounting to truly understand and be successful in finance, whether that's corporate finance, whether that's banking, etc. But yeah, finance is extremely integral to your success in a corporation. Okay, I'm done.
Well, they have a new concentration, which is finance for accounting and consulting. So it's sort of, we just call it
Oh, that's perfect.
CPA track accounting, basically. And I think that is, has become quite popular for students, obviously, for obvious reasons. So, Meaghan, you want to talk on that topic about the finance?
Yeah, sure. For me, the rotational program that I went into was not only finance. There were certain finance rotations in it that I kind of gravitated towards, but one of the things I kind of liked about it was that I could see other aspects of the company and kind of compare them to what I thought I wanted and see if it is what I really wanted. So even though I didn't do all of the rotations, just in hearing what my friends were going through in their rotations and working in the company in general, kind of to what other people had spoke about, it seems that the finance groups are kind of the powerhouse of the company almost, and everybody else turns to them and asks them questions. So I kind of liked that, and I liked how in-depth the analysis that we were doing was. So for real estate, it's really, really important to understand that, this is specific, but in New York and in general, the value of a building is derived from how much income it generates, which a lot of people don't know. So for me, it was really interesting to dig into the weeds and figure out how much income is coming in, where is it coming from, what are the different sources. So I found it really interesting. And for real estate also, we talk to all different groups. So I get to interact with a lot of the other groups. We use our research analysts for everything, our leasing team. So it was fun for me to get to learn all about the different groups and the different roles. But at the end of the day, I kind of liked how in the capital markets and the finance group, you could really be an expert that a bunch of other people would turn to with their questions.
Thanks. Well, John, then Mike, I guess. I'll switch it around. So.
I think some of the stuff that I took away, of the many things I took away from CSOM for sure, and kind of echoing Ryan and Eduardo's point, like I wasn't a concentration in accounting, but I find myself referencing stuff that I learned from taking, you have to take financial accounting, but FAST, I took one of the FAST classes, and that was is still extremely relevant, and just having a good understanding and baseline in accounting can help you set yourself up really well to be a competent financial professional. And I think a lot of the stuff that we learned in classes when you're a junior and senior, specifically in some of the more corporate strategy and corporate finance classes, kind of set you up for not necessarily the technical skills, which is more what you learn when you get there, but it's more kind of the thought process of how to understand these big $1 million problems. And that's not something necessarily you could just you can learn yourself, but having an expertise from a professor who's worked in the industry and had that experience and has solved those problems, that's where I think I applied a lot of the learnings that I got in school. And I've definitely seen that flushed out into stuff that I'm working in my past roles, and even in my current role. A lot of the kind of stuff that I'm working on in my day-to-day right now is just looking at a lot of scenario planning. So what if we expect to see certain economic conditions happen, and we see customers according to our annual operating plan, we're coming in 15% under. This is just an example, but 15% under. What levers are we going to have to pull to make sure that we can cover some of those losses in revenue, and make sure we can cover our costs and make sure that we're still coming out okay. So looking at a lot of scenario planning and referencing back some of the strategic minds and strategic thought processes that you have from classes at BC, I think I've definitely seen fleshed out now.
So I think my experience, at least compared to the rest of the folks on the panel here, I'm probably the furthest removed from being a financial professional, being a salesperson, but all of my clients are. And as a salesperson, and now as a leader of salespeople, one of the key things that I try to make sure the people that work with me have is a strong ability to ask questions of our customers and our prospects, because I think one of the sales sins they talk about is if you're doing more talking than the customer, you're probably going down the wrong path. And I think what studying finance has done has allowed, it basically creates a common language. So, whereas I would never pretend to be the subject matter expert that my clients are, that's their job. I have enough, I always like to use some self-deprecating humor to make me dangerous enough to get myself into trouble. I can talk enough and ask the right poignant questions related to the work they're doing to lead them hopefully down the path that will make them want more things from us. So for me, it creates that common language, more so than a lot of other potentially other concentrations I could have taken.
And sort of on that, Michael, because I think, one of my experiences having been at BC for a long time is I think so few people really consider sales, at least initially. I think so many people will end up in sales, but don't identify that. But yet when they talk about, working with clients and solving clients' problems and being, sort of having a job where they're constantly like on the go and that they want to have something that's lucrative and also a quality of life. A lot of times I'll be like, oh, you want sales? And then they're like, no, like,
yeah, I mean,
that's another panel, but while we're talking about that,
I think sales gets a bad rap as like, the stereotypical car salesman sort of thing. The real, I've had the ability to stay at 5-star hotel and get, my honeymoon was in Hawaii and I didn't spend a dime because you get points on hotels. I've done all that. That's cool. We also travel 180 nights a year. Sometimes it's maybe not that many, but that can be a grind. But I think, the glamour and the kind of the road work aside, the way that, at least my firm likes to look at it is, if you're, there's a couple levels of quality of relationship that we try to identify. For the lowest level, we're a vendor, and that's not what we try to be. We really try to be a partner with our customers, and it almost becomes a consultative type role. While you're not maybe working on an entire project, like a consulting firm, you're not hired for that. Clients often come to you with, hey, here, I have a specific problem. I know you guys can do something for us. What is that? And I'll give a quick example that we're working on right now. There's a development bank in Washington, D.C. Essentially, the way they operate is they issue debt and they get government grants and different sources of capital that way. With that capital, they make loans and investments in projects in Latin America to basically make life better for some of those developing countries, whether it's, creating a sewage system here or developing a school system there. So the goal is for them to deploy the capital that they've raised to make the world a better place in these countries, in an idealistic fashion. Now, it's never possible to have 100% of that capital deployed at all times. So the capital that they don't have deployed, they invest. And they have all sorts of issues, this one specific bank, around what are the efficiencies of our investments? How do we get from point A to point B? We buy a bond here. How does it show in our portfolio systems, our accounting systems? And we have some solutions for that. So you really get to understand the operations of this investment side in working here, and then obviously try to fit your solution here and there. So it really it's less of like a one and done type sale. It really becomes a longer term project when you're doing it correctly. So sales, I think, gets a bad rap, if you think about it like a car salesman. I think there's a lot more to it than that.
Absolutely. Thank you. So what are, in terms of your experiences with being at, an undergrad business school, concentrating in finance, where are the weak where have been the weak points for you? Like, where have you felt like, okay, finance is great for this, but I wish I had done maybe a little bit more of this or that? Like anything, would you change your experience at BC, or would you take, I know, Eduardo, you talked about, how the importance of accounting to really inform the job that you're doing, but any other things that you think that, because we're talking to sophomores too, so things that you think might be important for you to sort of balance your I guess your academic preparation.
Yeah, so I am actually a really big fan of the CSUM core. I think it does a really good job of exposing you to different areas of business. Like you have your marketing, operations, organizational behavior. Two things. One thing that I wish I would have known before is I feel that that I should have went a little bit deeper into organizational behavior, kind of like understanding how to manage teams, understanding company culture, because I think that would have helped me navigate working relationships a little bit better. I'm really type A and I can be cold sometimes. And so I've gotten some feedback throughout the years to better myself that I think some classes at BC would have definitely helped with that. I'm relaying the accounting experiences just because I was a corporate financial statement and analysis concentration. I don't know if that exists anymore, but when I was there, that used to exist. It was like some sort of like a pseudo accounting type of concentration. And as I was interning, my boss had said, "What is this? I don't understand what this means." And so I tried to explain it to him and he's like, just get the accounting degree. You won't regret it. And I never did. If you find yourself going the route that you're going to join an organization like a big Fortune 500, a Fortune 500 company, go into marketing. I don't know if you need the entire concentration, but definitely take more than just the intro to marketing class. It will definitely help you have better conversations with your business partners and understand how an organization kind of like works. So like a J&J, a L'Oreal, a Procter Gamble, they're very like sales focused and marketing focused. So a lot of the business leaders have that sort of a mindset. So having a finance, accounting background, you're more quantitative, but it might be more difficult for you to understand the marketing facet of it. So yeah, anyone can do like a SWOT analysis. Like that's kind of like the bridge between like qualitative and quantitative, but like understanding like how to connect with a consumer and like telling a story and like why a certain product is better than another. And like, how do you kind of relay that from a marketing perspective? I think that's something that more CSUM students should kind of like do, or at least I should have done. I learned it through more experiences with working with different marketing and sales business partners. But I think I should have kind of delved a little much deeper into that realm.
I'll let anybody jump in next who wants to either add on to that or talk about your own recommendations.
I would say technology type classes or courses, being, in a fintech company, probably the original fintech company, I've learned a lot kind of on the fly, and you pick up stuff by talking to your customers, but having a bit more background on things like data management, even Python and coding and things like that, where, in my role, I probably wouldn't really use it, but in, the marketing world, the financial, sales and trading world, where you're just as likely to see somebody with an engineering degree in a seat as a finance seat, I would say those courses are becoming more and more important. Having just a finance degree, if you want to get into banking, I know that's not what this panel's about, but if that's the sort of thing you want to do, it's just becoming more and more prevalent. How can I take data from different sources and translate it programmatically to come up with some sort of signal or indication of an action.
Yeah, you beat me to it, Mike. And I don't want to belabor the point, but that was the one piece that if I were going to go back and do the data systems, maybe a little bit, as you mentioned, a little bit of coding. That would have been useful in my finance job. It would have been useful in both my jobs since then. So much of being a good financial mind is combing through loads and loads of data and figuring out what matters and how do you present it in a way that your manager or CEO or CFO or whoever will understand, because they're not in the weeds. And those tools can save so much time, I think, and bring a lot of clarity to your thought process. Eduardo, that was a great shout, though, too. I did the marketing major. I'm really glad that I did, just because of how much those brand level conversations underpin everything in a company like P&G or L'Oreal or whoever.
I totally agree. I kind of have an anecdotal story about the programming. I took one coding class at BC, or I took two, but one mainly the intro to programming, I think it was, whatever the first intro classes for the information systems major. And I don't think they still teach it, but we learned Visual Basic, which at the time I was like, I have no idea when I'm ever going to use this. But there's a way you can use it in Excel, and you can create all kinds of functions and create buttons and create like all kinds of things that will make whatever you're trying to do easier and faster. And I was able, on the team I'm on now, when I was rotating with them, to create this large spreadsheet that had a lot of data, and I, through VBA, created little buttons on the side that allowed whoever was using it to filter the data really fast. And I think in a company like mine, which is kind of run like a bank, our managing directors are very to the point, so they loved being able to just open it and click a button and get exactly what they wanted to. So I think that might have hopefully contributed to why they decided to hire me and maybe not someone else from the rotational program. And I took one class. It wasn't a lot. I was not an expert by any means. I mean, you can Google a lot of the Visual Basic stuff, but just having used it before and knowing how to put the different pieces together to achieve what you want to was super helpful. So totally agree that any type of coding, computer science, data classes are super helpful in whatever you end up going into, whatever type of finance.
Yeah, I don't want to, keep repeating the same point, but to kind of build off of that, taking those skills that hopefully you can learn from, those technical skills that you learn from either classes or on your own. There's tons of resources that you can do outside of traditional classes as well. Like I've taught myself some programming just based on YouTube, or there's tons of free websites. So there's tons of opportunity there. But I think what I learned and wish I had a kind of class on, and I think this is kind of what Sophomore Accelerator has grown into as well, is just like how being able to take all that data and all that information that you are quantitatively processing or qualitatively processing and make it into a story. And like, how do you tell someone who's not in the weeds, like, okay, why should I care? What are my actions, and what is the risks, and what are the possibilities that if this goes wrong? You want to be able to take that and package it up. And that's whether you're making it in the presentation or it's in a dashboard on Tableau or Power BI, having some conceptual understanding of the technical part of that, but also looking at it. And this is where you kind of learn also from being on the job and learning from your professors as well. As like, what is that, VP or director, what are they looking for, and what's the questions they're going to ask? Then that's almost easier to build your end result from that part down. You don't want to show just like all of the data that you think would be helpful. You want to know what they want, and then that will help you kind of really tailor your efforts for sure.
Anyone have anything to add?
I'd say on John's point, in sales, we call that the so that you can. You can talk all these features, but really what the client's after, or what an internal stakeholder, or whether you're trying to sell something, whether it's a product or an idea, they're really after the benefit. It's the so that you can, it's the statement after that. So that's a good point, John, being able to kind of tie all these things together into a narrative.
Great. Well, I was going to ask one more question, which was like, and then I'll just let students, if any of you guys on the call want to, you can use chat to throw your questions out there. It's probably the easiest thing to do. But like, just advice to sophomores. I mean, obviously COVID aside, because it's a really weird time. So, and none of us have any, we don't have a crystal ball, so we don't really have a precedent on that, but just sort of thinking about like if it were a normal year. But like just sort of things that you think, wow, you know, I wish my sophomore self knew this, that you want to share, pearls of wisdom, so to speak.
One thing for me that was a big point I wish I knew was, if you're not going into banking or accounting, your timeline of getting a job or an internship is very different from your friends that are in banking and accounting. And it can be kind of hard not to get discouraged by the fact that, okay, it's October and I don't have a job yet lined up. And I mean, in the big picture, that's super early. Most people in other industries don't get their internships or their jobs until the spring or graduation, or even after graduation. So try not to get caught up in that, and don't accept an internship or a job early just because you want to secure something. I'd say just wait until it's something that you're really interested in and you're passionate about, and it will come even if it's later. But I know that for me, it was really hard to see all my friends getting hired in September and October, and I had to wait till February. So yeah.
Thank you. Glad you said that, because it's extremely important.
I would say get comfortable being uncomfortable. I think there's always going to be somebody in the room that knows more than you about something, or you just need to understand that you're not, you know, I think as a BC student, you probably were near the top of your class in high school, sort of thing, and people are used to being, you know, having a lot of knowledge. In the professional world, there are people who are always going to know something more than you. So be comfortable not knowing things, but act on that and ask a lot of questions. Ask, you know, and I think they'll go against, people will say there's no such thing as stupid questions. There's definitely such things as stupid questions. Ask good, pointed questions. And it's okay not to know the answer. It's okay to take things back. You know, I think you lose credibility by trying to act like you know an answer when you don't. And I think it's very often that people will see through that. So just get comfortable not knowing all the answers, being uncomfortable.
Maybe a piece of advice, kind of more, you know, school oriented, something that when I was a sophomore, a senior who I was a teammate with kind of gave me a piece of advice. He was talking about like your relationship with your professors. And he said, make sure you have at least once, maybe not twice a semester, go to your office hours for your professor, but not for your class. Go to see, and like he recommended, you know, go and talk to them about their career path, what they did before they got into teaching, because I did that and I found a lot of different ways that professors came to become professors, and tons of different experiences and just different light on, like, you know, finance or banking, and that kind of helped steer me towards more of my kind of corporate finance that I'm in now. So I think that was a really good piece of advice, and also that just helps foster a good relationship. And professors love to talk about themselves, so that's an easy way to get to know them.
I can go next. Ask questions. It's super basic, but a lot of people who I've managed who are first years, like right out of college, they tend to want to impress instead of kind of show any sort of like confusion about a topic that you're talking about. So if you have no idea what they're saying, please ask them to clarify, and they will respect you so much more. Instead of going back to your desk, churning your wheels for like 6 to 8 months or whatever, trying to figure something out, like just ask the question that you just don't understand, and do your research on company culture, because I think that will really help you figure out if that company that you want to start to work out right after college or eventually want to transition to is a good fit for you. I think that's something that I wish I would have learned a little sooner.
I think fit is a really important piece. I also think, and this is, I don't think this is a diametrically opposed point to what Meaghan was saying about trying to get a job that you're passionate about right out of school. I think that should be everyone's goal, is to find something they're passionate about out of school. I understand that. But I also think there's value in having a job that you know is a good fit and is a really good learning opportunity also, that you can turn into a springboard for something else. That was 100% my experience. If you had told me that when I was a sophomore, I probably would have been like, I don't know, disappointed that it was going to take a couple years or whatever of learning in order to pivot into the next thing. Now that, you know, I just turned 31, but I feel like now I am in my lane. Like, this is where I want to be. This is what I want. Like, this is it. This is the destination sector for me. But that probably, like I said at the very beginning, wouldn't have happened had I not had that really great foundational experience in a first job out of school. So I think there's definitely value in that. And then I think John made an awesome point that I regret that I didn't do a better job of at school, which is building and maintaining really good relationships with professors that you trust or are really interested by. Because you never know, not that you're trying to pump professors for future help down the line or something like that. I don't like thinking of it that way, but you know, if you're trying to apply for grad school, if you're looking for a recommendation down the line, a lot of people are looking to see what relationships you had with undergrad professors. I don't know, Eduardo, if you needed to cross that bridge looking into grad schools, but when I applied to grad schools, I was reaching back out to folks, professors at BC that some of them I hadn't even talked to in maybe, I don't know, 3-4 years, something like that, which didn't always feel great. Like, I was grateful that they did remember me and were really nice and helped me out. And, you know, we did have good relationships while I was at school, but put in the legwork a little bit to build those and keep them close, because there's no downside to building those relationships, I think.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Does anyone have any questions I want to throw out there? Are you guys okay if we put this on our YouTube channel too for our career casts? Because there's just a lot of interest on this particular topic. And, you know, Drew, I think Drew was on the call, my colleague, but like, that's something that we're, you know, constantly trying to build up. I think what's happening is a lot of our, you know, everybody's kind of getting used to doing things on their own time. So this asynchronous stuff with learning has been just thrown everybody in a loop. It's crazy. A lot of our, Meaghan, so we were doing the peer advisor call. Meaghan was a peer advisor on our office, and they were all just saying, oh my God, like I'm instantly behind. And it just happened like in a minute, because you feel like you have, you know, you're off your, and I'm sure you guys are experiencing this professionally too, but the rhythm is so difficult to keep, right? When you're, you know, when you just don't have that same type of schedule. So it's been kind of a challenge. And I think our students are really finding a challenge with that too, just with the mix of some live, some asynchronous, you know, all that kind of crazy stuff. So it's been a pretty weird time. So don't think we have any questions. I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so that's cool. You guys okay if anybody reaches out to me and wants to just reach out to you for contact info and all that sort of thing? Okay. Of
course.
I personally would love it. I love to talk to people. I could
awesome.
I could talk for hours.
Okay, you're gonna get signed up for that. Watch out. Well, once you've got to first try and keep your company afloat.
Well, yeah, that has been such a fun dynamic.
Yeah.
We're like such a small brand within like the total L'Oreal portfolio, but
yep,
we're ironically doing well within our fragrance business. I have no idea who is out there buying fragrances, but there's a large community that is actually doing so. But it's been really fun to kind of transition from a heavy brick and mortar, like your traditional like Macy's, Nordstrom, like going in store, to an e-commerce direct to consumer. Pretty much from 1 week to the next, our shutdown happened and they were like, okay, we're transitioning to e-retailer and r.com today. Figure it out, get it done.
For a luxury brand that's all about fit, right?
Yeah. It's been fun having those Zoom and whatever Teams conversations and whatnot, but yeah, you really have to be agile in certain industries depending on what's going on in the world.
Right. And retail was in free fall for before this, so you just can't even imagine, you know.
Yeah, for us at least, our prestige business is dying. No one's going to Saks, and Barney's and Bergdorf Goodman have filed for bankruptcy. Century 21 just filed for bankruptcy. So,
Yeah.
you know, Sephora, Ulta, we're just holding on for dear life.
Fingers crossed they stay alive.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's wonderful seeing all of you, and you know, stay healthy, and fingers crossed that we all survive the winter.
Same.
And probably be back in touch. But thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for doing this, Amy.
Amy.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
All right,
Thank
take
you
care.
so much.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Great seeing you. Take care.